and welcome back to another episode of International Immersion, a podcast that seeks to capture the combined experiences of people, places, traveling, current events, living abroad, and much, much more. First of all, I want to give a shout out, as I know International Immersion has been off the radar over the last year to year and a half. There have been a number of big changes in my life, but in that time I have been able to travel to a number of new countries, and I'm currently preparing new content based on the new countries I visited, experiences I've had, and eager to share this with the audience. So with that, I appreciate your patience and am happy to bring the show back. With that being said, I want to go ahead and jump into today's topic. As the show has been out for some time, I wanted to bring back something base and something that I think is useful for anyone considering international travel or just travel in general. And hence the topic for today's discussion is financial tips for travel that I've amassed from my own travel experiences both domestically in the US and overseas. Anytime you travel, you have to plan accordingly and plan across different types of aspects, whether it's your mental capacity, whether it's your knowledge of a location. But anytime you travel, you have to have the financial resources, otherwise the trip's not going to happen, or you could be putting yourself into a pretty bad situation if you are overseas and you run out of money. So no one wants to be in that situation. So today I want to go over a number of ideas and experiences that I've amassed from my own travel experiences that I think can be beneficial to anyone who's considering to travel overseas for the first time, or just some additional tips and suggestions that I think will work and will save you both time and money. So to begin with, I think the simplest and most straightforward thing anyone has to do is you have to do your due diligence and you have to research the location you're going to. Whether you're traveling to another state in the United States or you're traveling overseas, you have to research where you're going and how long you're planning to stay there, what you're planning to do, and you have to understand the environment you're going to put yourself into. So this can take many forms, but one of the things that I do anytime I am planning to go to a new country is that I will familiarize myself with that country. So you need to think about, okay, what is the currency? What is the exchange rate? What is the cost of living? What is transportation like? What is the banking system like there? What are airfare costs? All these aspects you have to do at least some basic research on to prepare yourself, because you need this information in order to make a ascertainable budget and to make sure your budget maximizes the time and that you're planning accordingly financially. So, and the other thing with that is you have to save up enough money and you have to allocate enough resources to manifest what you want to do. So if you're going to go to a country for a week, that's one thing. 2 weeks, however long you're going to stay and however expensive that country is, you have to take all these factors into consideration. And I know we've all heard horror stories about people who travel somewhere, they've not done their due diligence, they've not done research, and they either regret the trip, they don't enjoy it, they don't get the most out of it, or in many cases even worse scenarios can unfold. So you have to start with research and you have to take the time and energy to do that, because it may, why do I need to do that? I'll just go travel. And that's fine. If you want to do that, there are plenty of tour operators or companies that will take care of all that for you. And I think anytime you're traveling overseas for the first time, using a tour service, a company provider, or something along those lines is a great way to do it without a lot of personal investment. But the downside of that is going to be more expensive. But for a first-time person, I think it's a good idea. And it'll also get you familiar with that country and allow you to do more. And going a little further, once you have traveled with an agency or in a guided format, after that, if you've gained enough confidence and knowledge of a location, you can definitely plan your own travel. It will take more time and energy, but in many cases, you'll be able to save a lot more money and you'll be able to do more things off the beaten path and maybe get more in-depth or familiarize yourself more with that country on a ground level. So in due time, just know yourself, know what you want to do, know where your skill sets are, your strengths and weaknesses, all these things you need to factor in when you're planning travel. All right, so moving on to part 2. Let's say you've done your research, you're planning to go to a country, you've learned about the place, you have enough knowledge where you think you can begin planning and executing your plan. So you first and foremost, you need to prepare your financial resources. And this can be a number of things, whether it's your bank cards, credit cards, cash, insurance, or anything else you think that you will financially need while you're on a trip. Now, the first and foremost, you need to have access to your bank account, and the best way to have that is through a debit card. But whenever you travel, you have to think about foreign transaction fees and the costs associated with withdrawing money in a foreign country or converting money in a foreign country. So my personal recommendation is I use the Charles Schwab checking account and their debit card because it waives all foreign transaction fees and reimburses you at the end of each billing cycle or monthly cycle. So it's a great card, and I use this whenever I travel. It works in almost every country, I think over 200 countries in total, and it's great because I don't have to worry about foreign transaction fees, and all the fees I get charged, they are reimbursed back to the checking account. In order to do that, you need to have a brokerage account with Charles Schwab, but through that, you can get this checking account. It also has a decent interest rate as well. I think it's 0.75% last I checked. So it's a great resource, and I recommend this card for anyone traveling. There are a number of resources, but making sure you have a bank card that does not charge foreign transaction fees, both on your bank's end and the foreign bank. You may not be able to get around the foreign bank's transaction fees, but always make sure you get around yours, because that's going to really deplete your funds over time, especially in some places, and ATMs can charge a lot of commission for using them. So familiarize yourself and find a bank card that you do not get any foreign transaction fees. So that's my 2 cents on bank cards. The next thing, always bring a certain amount of cash or currency with you. So whenever I traveled, let's say to China, India, Nepal, or some of the countries I've been, every trip I always bring several $100s in USD, because the USD is accepted in a lot of places, or it's easily convertible if not. So always bring cash with you. If your items, let's say your bank card doesn't work, something gets stolen, always keep cash. It's a matter of essential security and will potentially save your life, for lack of a better way of saying it, if you're traveling. So always keep cash on you, or bring a combination of your home currency, and if you can get a good exchange rate, convert some money so you have some local currency to arrive. Otherwise, when you arrive, find a bank or find a service where you can exchange money. Do not exchange money at the airport if you can avoid it, because you're going to get a much higher commission and a worse exchange rate. Now, if you don't have any options, my suggestion would be is exchange a little money at the airport, but don't exchange a lot. Just get enough to get you through, so you can exchange at a location where you'll get a better exchange rate in whatever country you're going to. So that's my 2 cents on cash. Next, credit cards. There are so many credit cards, so many travel credit cards. It can be very overwhelming and, complex to think about what cards to get. So at the end of the day, you don't need, one card for everything. You find a good credit card, but first and foremost, make sure it does not charge any foreign transaction fees, just like a debit card. That will kill you over time, especially in surcharges and the foreign transaction fees that those cards will charge. So one of the cards that I use is the Capital One Quicksilver card. It's got 1.5% cash back, and it has no foreign transaction fees. So I always bring that card with me when I travel, and I link usually Uber or any other services that I use overseas to that card, so I don't have to worry about any transaction fees or any other additional fees. So that's a good card. There's also the Amex cards. There's a whole host of cards you can use, so I don't really have any personal recommendations. Just make sure it's a good card, it has a lower interest rate, no foreign transaction fees, and it works in the market. So MasterCard, Visa are going to be your best options. They're the ones probably the most accessible globally. Amex is also good, but it has less, I'd say, global acceptance, and of course Discover. But there are many countries that Discover cards do not work, so I would advise some caution if you're going to use a Discover card. And then, of course, insurance. If you're overseas, it's always good to have a travel insurance policy. For some trips, maybe if you're going to a more stable place, don't worry about it, but I always buy travel insurance whenever I travel, just in case something happens, or, more importantly, if something medically happens, like if you get sick, if you get injured, you want to have that security because you do not want to be stuck in a foreign country for a prolonged period of time and potentially have to pay a large amount of money for hospitalization or other medical services that would not be potentially covered on your health plan in your home country. So depending on what type of health provider you have, what country you live in, it's always advisable to get a travel insurance policy. There are so many to pick from, but you want to pick a policy that at least gives you basic coverage, especially in terms of copay, hospitalization, and especially during the pandemic, like an indemnity if you're quarantined. That's not as big of an issue anymore now, but you want to look through a policy and based on where you're going, think about what risk factors are highest and pick a policy that best matches where you're going to cover the potential problems that may arise. So doing a bit of a recap. So, you want to find the right bank card. You want to bring cash. You want to have at least 1 or 2, maybe 3 credit cards, and you want to have a travel insurance policy. But also, you need to make sure you have emergency funds available. So let's say I plan my travel to Thailand for a week or 2 weeks. Great. I've set aside X amount of money for that time. That's great. But I'm always going to set aside additional funds that I can either access or transfer into my account in case something happens, or I need those funds if I lose access to money or something else happens. So you always want to have a plan B, or not plan C, and also let your family or friends know you're traveling. So if something does happen, you do have a support network back in your home country that you can call on if you need it. So those are just a few of my recommendations for you when you travel, because you always have to plan things out and be prepared for anything that may come your way. But at the end of the day, do not let that discourage you from traveling, as it's a wonderful experience and you'll gain so much out of it. So that pretty much wraps up my basic fundamentals of what you should have and bring with you when you travel, because I wanted this episode to be quick, easy, and digestible for anyone, and just a quick, simple guide you can use when you travel. And the resources that I have highlighted will definitely help you, especially the types of bank cards, cash, and things you should do, like have insurance when you travel. All those things will make your trip more stable and will allow you to rest easy whenever you're overseas and away from your comfort zone. So with that, we're always eager to hear feedback from our listeners, what your travel experiences were like, what resources did you use, what cards, what insurance policies, etc. All these things are great resources that collectively will help everyone in their travel experiences and their planning. So with that, we appreciate you tuning in for this episode of International Immersion. Please check out our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and if you want to be a guest on our podcast or want to share ideas, send us an email at internationalimmersionpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we appreciate you tuning in once again, and we will see you on the next one.